Welcome back for round 2 of conference final previews. Earlier today, we did the Eastern Conference final, but now we're heading out west. We're going back to Edmonton. Yeah, it doesn't really roll off the tongue like Cali. As a matter of fact, do Canadian cities have any sort of nicknames, abbreviations? I can't think of any. I feel like I would have heard them through the years. I don't know any Vancouver nicknames. Like, think about down in the every city has a nickname. Everyone's got more nicknames than Diddy. You got Tinseltown. You got the Twin City. You got the Big Apple. You got Beantown, the city of brotherly love. You name it. If you're in a city, they got 4 names for it. What is Winnipeg's nickname? Oh, you going up to the peg? I can't think of it. Ottawa, Toronto. Toronto has to have one. Or do you guys just do you refuse a good nickname? Because I love dishing people nicknames. That's one of my strengths / why people hate me / love me, depending on where you fit in the group. When I was in college, oh my God, I dished out nicknames. I called one guy, I called him Billy Zane. If you don't know who that is, go Google him. He looked like Billy Zane. So I called him Billy Zane. And for 4 years in college, because of the first week, I looked at this guy, hey, what's up, Billy Zane? Everyone called him Billy Zane. There was this kid from California. I mean, I went to college. This was the first kid from California that I normally interacted with on a consistent basis. Before then, only miserable prick New Yorkers. And this guy was relaxed, exactly what you would think. He was so nice. He was from Palo Alto. He was always smiling. I just called him Smiles. I found out 3 years later he despised the nickname, but he was so nice that he just let everybody roll. Everyone was calling him Smiles. Yo, what's up, Smiles? And I was big on nicknames. I don't know if there are any nicknames for these Canadian cities, but we're going to be talking about one of those Canadian cities today. Edmonton, they're facing off with the Dallas Stars here in the conference final. And just as I did earlier, we're going to bring up some of these topics here that I have laid out for you on the sweet chin board. Oilers versus Stars, the 1 seed in the West, the Stars. I believe, as I hold this awkwardly, that the 1 seed in the West has not won the President's Trophy over the previous 2 years, but they've won the Stanley Cup. So the 1 seed in the West, Colorado 2 years ago, because the Panthers won the President's Trophy, as I'm still awkwardly holding this. And then last year, Vegas was the 1 seed in the West, as the Bruins won the President's Trophy. So, I don't know, maybe Dallas is looking at, maybe Dallas, this is their time. I will tell you this, in this series, I have a way better feeling than I do in the previous one. In fact, I have a great feeling. That's always good news, right? Anyway, starting off on this little checklist here, we're going to talk about health because it is very important for both of these teams. And with both of these teams, the health matters for different reasons. We'll start with Dallas, which I guess it's a little bit less of a concern, but I wouldn't underrate it by any stretch of the imagination because this player, this top-line player, a player who has produced in previous playoff years, who got off to a slow start, but then started to pick it up in the last round and then got injured. This is a top-line, top power play player, Roope Hintz. He missed the last 2 games of that Avalanche series, and coincidentally, in my opinion, those were probably 2 of their worst efforts of that round of the playoffs. When you look at the game at home that they lost, at Game 5, I mean, they got crunched in that game, although Ottinger wasn't at his best. Even if you look at the last game in Colorado, they got 1 goal in regulation, then they were able to win in double overtime, but they weren't consistently creating chances. And the reason that is because even if he's not playing at his best, Hintz is always on that top line with Robertson. Once in a while, you will see them change the third player. We've seen Stankov in there. We've seen Pavelski there. That's who traditionally was there. And then when they want to get that line going or add some extra juice or create a stack line, they'll put Wyatt Johnston on that line. But it's always Hintz and Robertson who play together. And that allows the Dallas Stars to slot everybody in their appropriate roles so that they can do the thing that they do the best, and that's attack you from every single front. 3 legitimate lines that you don't even know who to truly say is the top line. Because I'll tell you what, none of these 3 lines are quote-unquote third lines. They have 3 it's weird. They don't have an Edmonton line. Like, they don't have a Draisaitl, Hyman, McDavid type of line. But they don't have any third lines, and any one of those top three lines can take over a series, and you've seen that, and we're going to get to that because that obviously is the strength of the Dallas Stars. But if you take Hintz and pull him off that top line, then you have to take someone like Duchesne or Sagan off of their respective line. Like in that last series, we saw Pavelski, Robertson, and Duchesne, which put Ben back with Sagan, and they were mixing and matching, trying to find something that works. But when Hintz is in the lineup, even if that top line isn't producing, like it wasn't for a while throughout the course of this playoffs, you have Ben with Johnston and either Stankoven or Pavelski, depending on what you want to do. But then you have that line that's always rock solid, and they don't even have to think. It's a set it and forget it. Sagan, Duchesne, Marchment, and then the fourth line, which you saw contributed in a huge fashion in that opening series against Vegas. I mean, they really were contributing game after game, a couple of game winners over the course of that stretch of time. So Rupe Hintz being available in this series, I really think it's huge for Dallas. Can Dallas win without Rupe Hintz? Yes, they can. They absolutely can, because they have somebody, like I said, the luxury of having Dadonov, who will step right into a top six role if necessary, or you can put him on the fourth line, or you can scratch him. He doesn't care. He'll watch the game in the backstage in the locker room, like Dean Portman when he got thrown out of that game against Iceland. But it's a great luxury to have. And then Hakanpää, the sixth, the sixth defenseman of the Dallas Stars. And this is important because, and we're going to get to this with Edmonton in a second, Dallas essentially played five defensemen through the entire first round of the playoffs. Nils Lundqvist was getting 4 minutes of time, so they were rotating five defensemen, and that's putting a pretty big burden and workload on some of those other defensemen. And if Hakanpää comes back, DeBoer actually trusts him, and they can get into a rotation, although they sat Lundqvist toward the end of that series, and his replacement, they had a little more faith in. Rather than 3 or 4 minutes, he got 12 minutes, which was helpful to those other defensemen. With that said, they just beat two pretty damn good teams with five defensemen. And a lot of that is because of what Tanev has been doing. And really, what an unbelievable deadline acquisition. So many times, you chase the big score, you chase the Jake Gensel, you chase guys who can score. Edmonton chased Henrique down. But man, Tanev had to line up for the most part against Eichel in the first series. You can see what he did against him. And then McKinnon in the last series, you can see what he did against him. What an unbelievable acquisition to put a guy in there who's just eating tons of minutes. So that was huge on their part, and they really are reaping the rewards. It's like many things in hockey. I talked about Barkov. All the things that truly matter when it comes to winning get overlooked unless they're on the stat sheet, in your face, and on the highlight reel. But that acquisition was huge for the Stars. And on Edmonton's side, I'm just going to say almost every important forward, what's their health status? The same way the Dallas defense had to eat 25 minutes a game, 26 minutes a game, that's what Edmonton did to their star forwards. McDavid, Draisaitl, look how much mileage they've had to put on themselves so far throughout the course of these playoffs. They had to chase in this last series. They were down multiple times in the series, and that meant an extra workload for McDavid and Draisaitl and all these guys, Hyman, and the rumor has it, none of them are healthy. And how do you know that? Because the majority of them aren't practicing on certain days. Like, they're trying to really get as much rest as possible. And I know they say, oh, well, that's always what happens during the playoffs. But in Edmonton's case, you need those players because, as we'll get into shortly, they don't have the Jamie Benns and Stankovens on line 3 who can contribute. They don't have a Dadonov just waiting around to fill in for somebody. They need their key pieces to perform, or else they don't win. So all those forwards, rumor has it Henrique should be ready early in the series. You may not think anything of it, but when you look at the production that so many of those guys on Edmonton are giving you, or should I say not giving you, somebody like Henrique re-entering the lineup, but he came back for one game. They're banged up. They are banged up, and I think those injuries, just the wear and tear on the Edmonton guys, and then Hakanpää, and more importantly, Rupe Hintz on the Dallas side, it will play a major factor in this series for certain. Next up on here, what do we got? Goaltending. You trust Skinner? It's something that just has to be mentioned. I'm not of the belief that Jake Ottinger is like I'm not putting him in the Shesterkin class. I'm not even going to put him in that Swayman class. He's shown multiple times over the course of these playoffs he can be beat. Absolutely. But Dallas plays a great team game in front of him. And I always value that over good goaltending, believe it or not, because you can rely on that. You can trust that. Dallas blocks shots like nothing you've ever seen before. When you saw what Colorado was doing in that opening round to the quote-unquote top defense, the Jennings Trophy winner in the Winnipeg Jets, and then see how many shots McKinnon was able to get through. I think every single guy went under on their shots on goal, the forwards, like almost every single game. And that's what Dallas does in their own end. But regardless, the goaltending, we already saw Edmonton have to use their third string goalie. There were jokes about calling Jack Campbell back up. They won a game, then went back to Skinner for the final two, and it ended up working out. But, I think Skinner is sub 900 throughout the course of these playoffs, and that's not what you want to see when you have a team like Edmonton trying to pull an upset. They're going to be on the road. They're underdogs in this series, and we'll talk about some bets at the end, just like we did in the last video. But for certain, the goaltending is a massive advantage for the Dallas Stars. I don't trust Skinner. I love his mustache. You don't trust Skinner. In fact, nobody trusted him at the end of that game after giving up too late to the Canucks. So huge advantage in net for, yes, the Dallas Stars. Moving on from there, we have the bottom six, and I just touched on this. Yes, Dallas greater than Edmonton. Dallas has been receiving production all up and down their lineup. Top line, second line, third line, fourth line, you name it, there's been production. You have Matt Duchene, game-winning goal, ended the series in Colorado. Sagan got a couple goals that series. We haven't really seen Jamie Benn score, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is the series where he has a couple of goals in there. We saw Wyatt Johnston go off in the first series. We saw the fourth line contribute in that first series. We saw Robertson have a few goals early, but then he kind of went quiet for a while. He's kind of due. I've always surmised that in order to win, you're way better off having multiple lines of 28 to 30 goal scorers than two 60 goal scorers on a stacked top line. And then you can use Tanev, use a shutdown line, do everything you can to make sure that line doesn't kill you. But if you have multiple lines, who are you putting your best checking center against? There's always going to be a line getting good looks. And you saw this with the Vegas Golden Knights. Every series, Marchessault would go off one series. Carlson had one series that he carried. Then you had Eichel going off at certain times. Stone had Stevenson. Having a bunch of guys who can score 20 or more, it massively benefits teams because there is no team like line to shut down. Okay, you want to shut down Hintz and Robertson? I would throw old Dusty Pavelski on that line. Okay, yeah. Use your checking center against old Dust out there. We'll put Stankoven with Johnston and Ben, and they'll feast on your lower lines because the Edmonton Oilers are getting a grand total of nothing. Yes, Willy Wonka style, nothing. You lose, and they've been losing many games, especially in that last series, because they need their top players to do everything. And those top players are eating so many minutes, and they're obviously banged up. What about the Fogels of the world? What about the McLeods of the world? They're doing a grand total of nothing. So in this series, Edmonton's potentially somewhat hurt Stars are going to have to do the heavy lifting, or their bottom six is going to have to pull some sort of miraculous, oh no, we were just joking, we actually can contribute in some way, shape, or form. So that's a huge advantage to Dallas because you couldn't even tell me who the bottom six forwards are for Dallas because even Daily Faceoff doesn't know how to list their lines. Sometimes I see the Duchene line listed as their second line. Wyatt Johnston, everyone goes, oh yeah, well, he's kind of their best player these plays. Oh, so he's on the third line? It's a dummy system like the old Spanish soccer, they had the false forward and whatnot, where it was all midfielders. That's kind of what this Stars team is. I love teams constructed like that, where, okay, you shut down Jason Robertson, who, you know what I think of him in the first place. Plenty of other guys can step up. Huge supplementary scoring advantage for Dallas. That's something I just wanted to bring up. Travel. So you do have some ailing members of your team. You do have McDavid, who's hurting a little bit, Draisaitl, who's hurting, Hyman potentially. You know how far these cities are from each other? It's like 2,000 miles. And I would skate 2,000 miles. But you want to talk about a far trek. The travel really is it's like an added wrinkle. It's almost like removing rest. You ever get off up? I mean, I just traveled over this past weekend. That's why there was no video on Monday, although I did that quick Instagram short, or the YouTube short rather. You're groggy. It's awful. I flew just a few hours. That whole day was ruined. And then, I'll save this for another podcast, but knowing you have to fly the next day, you get anxiety at night, like, oh, wait, did I forget those things? And then you don't sleep as well as you could. Oh, am I going to miss my alarm? And then when you get back, I got to try to reset, and I'm all groggy. I'm all out of it. You're tired for days. Traveling's the worst. And the extensive traveling that's going to have to take place in this series. Everybody talked about it 2 years ago when Calgary played Dallas, I think, in the first round. That was a 7-game series, and that was some gross travel there. And, anybody who's feeling a little crusty, that's definitely not going to help the situation going back and forth from Edmonton to Dallas. And then the last thing I had on here, the scam bracket versus the real bracket. As I mentioned time and time again, Edmonton, they got the benefit of the scam bracket. The Edmonton Oilers got themselves a win versus the Kings, who they beat the previous 2 years. They have their number. Then they get Vancouver, who I don't want to sound mean, but talk about a scam run. I mean, that post that they should have went down in that Nashville game. Oh, that was game 4 in Nashville, or was that game 3? But game after game after game, they're not even getting to 20 shots, but they're making the most of their opportunities. Edmonton has not even really been tested. And the fact that they're barely sneaking through these, I guess you can make the argument, well, they got through that, and now it's going to be like breathing new life, because sometimes you do see that. You do see a team get through a tough series. Like the Panthers, down 3-1 last year to Boston. They come back, and then after they win Game 7, it's off to the races. They win in 5, then they sweep Carolina. So you can try to convince me that, but those other factors just play too much of a role. You have potentially exhausted, somewhat injured players on the top 6 of Edmonton. You get no production from the bottom 6 in Edmonton. You have a goalie you don't trust. And then on the other side, you have multiple lines that you do trust and a goalie that you do trust. So I believe Dallas should absolutely take this series. I would be very surprised if the Oilers win this. Something has to happen. There has to be, the Oilers won because straight up hockey games, I don't think they're going to win 4 of however many games this series goes. And that will take me into some of my bets. That's obviously my favorite one. Dallas to win the series. If I had to price this, I would put it at -170, potentially -180. That's how much I think Dallas is better than Edmonton. And obviously, Edmonton was like my preseason pick to go. Hey, 1 round away. Anyway, let's get into some of the bets. Obviously, the one I like the most is the Dallas Stars, but not just the Dallas Stars to win the series. Hopefully, you guys all got in that Dallas to beat Edmonton when Edmonton was tied 2-2 in that last series, because we got them, what was it, like plus 280 or something like that when I gave it out in the video. But I will take Dallas -1.5 in this series at like plus 175. I have very little confidence in Edmonton, and they gave me very little reason to believe. Connor McDavid scored 1 goal in that last series against Vancouver. 3 games he was held pointless, and 2 more with 1 lone assist. So 2 games, 1 assist, 3 games, nothing, 1 goal over 7 games. If that doesn't sound like he's hurt, then I don't know what does. And then when you combine what Tanev and the Dallas defense was able to do against guys like McKinnon already, McKinnon got his somewhat, but he didn't destroy them whatsoever. I mean, they held him in check for the majority of that series. Yeah, when you couple that with the potential issues with the health with some of those forwards playing through injuries on Edmonton, I will take the Dallas Stars minus 1.5. And we can get into some kind of exotic bets. The first being, I found this one on BetMGM. I think Jamie Benn kind of had slow series, and he scored to tie that last game. Could this be the signal that he's going to kind of break out a little bit? I think Dallas has got a beating or 2 in them throughout the course of this. It might be game 1. I mean, Edmonton just played 7 games. You could say they get rest, but not too much rest before flying 2,000 miles. I would fly too. And then you got those injuries that they're still dealing with. They might be shorthanded a little bit. Probably no Henrique in game 1. And then some of those guys ailing. Give me 3 points in any game of the series for Jamie Benn. I believe that's plus 525. And then, in the event that Dallas shuts the Oilers down in a similar fashion that Colorado was able to have their stars somewhat shut down, Jason Robertson is due for it's been a while. I mean, he gets all the opportunities, top line, top power play. I'm hoping Rupe Hintz. I told you I like nicknames, Mr. Rince. Rinse me Jason Robertson most points in this series. I think it's plus 1,400. I understand how difficult that is when you're dealing with the Oilers power play. That bet is contingent on 2 things. The incredible job that Dallas does shutting down some of those players and using Tanev in that kind of shutdown role. And then those potential players ailing and just continuing to do what they did last series. Like if Connor McDavid is held pointless in 3 games, and I don't see them. Like I think this series might end in 5, to be honest with you. I know 2 years ago, one of the bets I gave for the series was I like Colorado minus 2.5 over the Edmonton Oilers. I kind of like that same thing. I think I might do a little bit on Dallas minus 2.5 in the series, which is why if there are that many games and Dallas is throwing a couple I'm trying some Jason Robertson most points in this series. I get why it might not be that great, but if those Oilers are hurting, it might actually be a semi-decent play. And if he's active game 1, I'm going to do the same plus 4,500 Rupe Hintz for most points in the series. Just, if he is back on that top line, who knows? Because before he left, he was getting hot. I don't know. That when you see a number that crazy, I think it's worth a little sniff. Outside of that, I also like Dallas series after 3, Dallas up 2-1. In fact, I don't know. I mean, I'm almost scared Dallas might go up 3-0. I like that bet. Dallas to win game 1, Dallas to win the series, and I understand you might be saying, oh man, my Dallas, I mean, they lose these game 1s. I understand that, and I am a little bit worried, but I also am getting a team that just played 7 games, has to travel to Dallas while Dallas has been waiting there, and some of their top players are kind of injured. I mean, Dallas, I guess we do have to see if Hintz plays. All these bets I heavily suggest. I really do think that's a huge factor. I think they will win this series even if he's limited or doesn't play all the games. But if he's in from day 1, game 1, I'm taking Dallas to kind of throw a beating in this one. I don't think you could say it's a failure of a season for the Oilers when you look at what they ended up with. I think they did a pretty good job, especially considering the way they started and had to fire their coach. And they kind of went, for the most part, on fire for the rest of the year. They could say they won 2 playoff rounds, and I guess it's enough to keep McDavid happy for another year because, those rumors start if they're not going far enough. Anyway, that's what I have for you here for this Western Conference Finals preview. Good luck to you, whatever you... Look, when it comes to these conference finals bets and futures bets, even I don't know where all of them are. every single site. How many road overtimes are there going to be? There's some crazy ones. Now, while I always appreciate you guys commenting and helping the engagement on these videos, I really would, if you don't mind, help the other people. There are some interesting ones, like I went to Fanduel, I checked Draftkings, I got that Jamie Benn one on BetMGM. Go sniffing around the sports books. Have a sportsbook, futures, sniffing session, and report any interesting ones that you might like here. Until next time, which is going to be pretty shortly because we have Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Final tomorrow, good luck to you. Better luck to me. You know what to do. Do me a favor here and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Did you just find me doing God knows what? Well, I don't know. I just uploaded a new comedy pod the other day. Hopefully you can watch some of that. I have 3 scams of the week because, if I don't do an episode for a little while, the scams start to build up and I got to get them all out. So there were a couple scams on there. I think you'll enjoy that. And everything else that I potentially have on my YouTube channel. If you want to own something, you really, oh my God, I lease a car, I rent my apartment, I want to feel like I own something. You want to know what you can do? You can come join my Patreon and be a minority owner of this show. Now, what do you get as a minority owner of this show? Interestingly enough, all the picks the night before when I upload them or whenever I can, you get the chats that I'm usually pretty present and active in unless everybody's miserable. But even the miserable people will add their bets and they'll add things that they like. And that's where Josh is going to be posting his MLB picks every single day in the morning before the prices move or whatever that is. And that's going to start in a couple weeks from now. So definitely check that out. Patreon.com/Andy Francess. Very much appreciated. Hopefully I see you there. If not, I'll see you tomorrow for Game 1 Eastern Conference Final. Take it easy. I'll talk to you then.